Part 1. The Legend Awakens. Commander Jake Morrison gripped the railing of the bridge as the research vessel Horizon's Edge shuddered through another pocket of unstable space. The void sector was living up to its reputation as the most dangerous region in known space. For 3 days now, they had been navigating through gravitational anomalies and energy storms that could tear apart a ship in seconds. "Commander, we're approaching the coordinates," called out Navigation Officer Amy Stone from her station. Her voice carried a mix of excitement and nervousness that Jake had been hearing from his crew for weeks now. Everyone aboard knew they were chasing what most people considered an impossible dream. Jake moved to the central command console and studied the star charts displayed on the holographic projector. 3 years of his life had led to this moment. 3 years of decoding ancient symbols, following dead-end leads, and convincing the Colonial Research Council to fund what many called a fool's errand. But the evidence had been too compelling to ignore, even if it challenged everything humanity thought they knew about their own history. Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her workstation where she had been analyzing the latest batch of data. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes showed the kind of exhaustion that came from months of intensive research. She had been the first to suggest that the symbols they found on Kepler 442b weren't just random markings left by some extinct alien civilization. They were human writing, but from a time period that shouldn't have been possible. "The energy readings are getting stronger," Lisa said, walking over to join Jake at the main display. "Whatever is out there, it's definitely artificial, and it's big." Jake nodded, remembering the day Lisa had first brought him her translation of the stone tablets they had discovered in the ruins. The symbols had told a story that seemed like pure fantasy. According to the ancient text, there had once been a human vessel called the Nightfall that possessed capabilities far beyond anything in the current human fleet. The ship had supposedly vanished during the early days of human expansion, taking with it secrets that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. "Sir, I'm detecting something on long-range sensors," reported Chief Engineer Ryan Bell from the engineering station. Ryan was a practical man who usually had little patience for archaeological expeditions, but even he had been intrigued by the technical specifications mentioned in the ancient writings. "It's massive, and it's definitely not natural." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Jake felt his heart rate increase as he realized they might actually be on the verge of the greatest discovery in human history. Or they might be flying straight into a trap that had been waiting for over 2 centuries. "Take us closer, but keep us at maximum sensor range," Jake ordered. "I want to know what we're dealing with before we commit to anything." As the Horizon's Edge moved deeper into the void sector, the crew began to understand why this region of space had such a fearsome reputation. The stars here seemed dimmer somehow, as if the very fabric of space was different. Strange energy patterns danced across their sensors, and more than once they had to adjust course to avoid what looked like tears in reality itself. Lisa consulted her notes again, cross-referencing the ancient symbols with the stellar coordinates they were following. According to the tablets, the Nightfall had been humanity's first attempt at building a vessel that could match the technological superiority of the elder races in the 23rd century that seemed laughable. Humanity was barely a minor player in galactic politics, tolerated by the major alien civilizations but hardly respected, the crystalline Zephyrians controlled the largest territory in this part of the galaxy, while the energy-based Lumina Collective dominated trade routes with their superior faster-than-light technology. Dozens of other alien species had established their own spheres of influence, each one viewing humanity as newcomers who had yet to prove themselves worthy of serious consideration. "Commander, you need to see this," Amy called out, her voice tight with amazement. Jake moved to the navigation station and looked at the long-range display. There, hidden within the collapsed remains of an ancient nebula, was a massive energy signature. The readings showed something that was clearly artificial, but the size estimates were almost impossible to believe. "How big is that thing?" Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Ryan checked his calculations twice before responding. Based on the energy displacement, I'd estimate it's at least 10 times the size of our ship. Maybe larger, and Commander, it's not just sitting there. The thing is powered up and running. The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. If the readings were accurate, they had found a vessel that had been missing for over 200 years, and it was still operational. That should have been impossible. No human technology could maintain itself for that long without regular maintenance and resupply. Lisa was already pulling up her translation files, searching for any additional information about the Nightfall's capabilities. What she found made her face go pale. Jake, according to these symbols, the Nightfall wasn't just an advanced ship. It was something else entirely. The text mentions something called the inheritance of the first children and references to knowledge that came from before the beginning. What does that mean? Jake asked, though he had a feeling he wasn't going to like the answer. I think, it means that whoever built the Nightfall had access to technology that didn't originate with modern humanity. The symbols suggest that our ancestors found something, or learned something, that gave them capabilities we can't even imagine today. The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. Everyone had grown up with the standard history of human expansion into space. Earth had developed faster than light travel in the late 21st century, and humans had begun exploring nearby star systems in the early 22nd century. It was a straightforward story of technological progress and gradual expansion. But if Lisa's translations were correct, that story might be missing some very important chapters. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple fleet signatures approaching our position," Amy reported, her voice cutting through Jake's thoughts. "Long-range sensors show at least 6 different groups converging on this location." Jake felt his stomach drop. The major alien powers had obviously been monitoring human activities in this sector, and they had decided to investigate what the Horizon's Edge had discovered. If the Nightfall was really out there, and if it really possessed the capabilities described in the ancient texts, then every major civilization in the galaxy would want to claim it for themselves. "Time until they reach us?" Jake asked. "The fastest group will be here in approximately 4 hours," Amy replied. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing his own mixture of excitement and fear reflected in their faces. They were archaeologists. And researchers, not soldiers? If a shooting war broke out over the Nightfall, they would be caught in the middle with no way to defend themselves, but they were also possibly the only humans who understood what they might have found. If the ancient vessel was really out there, humanity deserved the chance to reclaim what might be their own lost heritage. "Take us in," Jake ordered. "Whatever's waiting for us in that nebula, we're going to find it before anyone else does." Part 2. First contact with the impossible, the Horizon's Edge, trembled as it pushed through the outer layers of the collapsed nebula. Chief Engineer Ryan Bell watched his instruments with growing amazement as the energy readings climbed beyond anything he had ever seen. The nebula wasn't just hiding something massive. It was hiding something that was actively manipulating the space around it. "Commander, the gravitational fields in here don't make sense," Ryan called out from his engineering station. "It's like something is bending space to create a pocket of stability in the middle of this chaos." Jake Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the main view screen. The swirling gases of the nebula danced across the display in patterns that seemed almost alive. Every few seconds, flashes of blue light would illuminate the cosmic fog from within, hinting at something enormous hidden in the depths. Navigation Officer Amy Stone was fighting to keep their course steady as the ship encountered gravitational eddies that pulled them in different directions. "Sir, the navigation computer keeps trying to correct our heading. It's like something is guiding us toward the center of the nebula." Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her translation work, her face pale with excitement and worry. "That matches what the symbols described. The texts mention that the Nightfall could call to its children across the void. I thought it was just poetic language. But what if it was literal?" The view screen suddenly cleared as they passed through a final wall of nebular gas, and the entire bridge crew fell silent. Before them, floating in a pocket of clear space, was the Nightfall. The vessel was unlike anything they had ever seen. It stretched out for what must have been kilometers, its hull a dark material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, glowing with the same blue energy they had seen flickering through. The nebula. The ship's design was clearly human in origin, but it incorporated elements that human technology shouldn't have been able to create. "My God," whispered Amy, her voice barely audible over the bridge's background noise. "It's beautiful, and terrifying at the same time." Ryan was scanning the ship with every sensor at his disposal, and the readings he was getting made no sense. "Commander, that ship is not just intact, it's fully powered and operational. The energy signature is off the charts, and I'm detecting active force fields, operational life support, and what looks like a working faster-than-light drive." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. A ship that had been missing for over 200 years should have been a derelict hulk floating dead in space. Instead, they were looking at what appeared to be a fully functional vessel that could probably outperform anything in the current human fleet. "Try to establish communication," Jake ordered. "Standard first contact protocols." Amy began transmitting on all known frequencies, sending greetings in every language in their database. For several minutes, there was no response. Then, without warning, the response came not through their communication systems, but directly into their minds. The voice was calm, measured, and distinctly artificial, but it carried an authority that made everyone on the bridge straighten up instinctively. "Welcome, children of Earth. I am Nemesis, guardian and guide of the vessel you call Nightfall. You have traveled far to find what was never truly lost." Lisa grabbed Jake's arm, her eyes wide with shock. "Jake, it's speaking directly to our minds. That's technology we can't even begin to understand." The voice continued, and Jake could feel the artificial intelligence examining their thoughts, learning about them in ways that should have been impossible. "You seek answers about your past, about the true heritage of humanity. Your arrival was anticipated, though the timing is concerning how?" Jake managed to ask, speaking aloud even though he suspected the AI could read his thoughts. "Directly, the others come with different intentions. They seek to claim what belongs to humanity, to add our knowledge to their own power. This cannot be permitted." Through the view screen, Jake could see the Nightfall beginning to change. Sections of its hull were sliding apart, revealing internal structures that pulsed with energy. Weapon systems that had been hidden beneath the dark plating emerged and began tracking across the empty space around them. "Others?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "The alien fleets that follow you approach the edge of the nebula. 6 major powers, each believing they can take what they desire through force. They do not understand what they face." Ryan was frantically trying to make sense of the readings coming from the Nightfall. "Commander, those weapon systems. I can't even identify half of what I'm seeing. And the power levels required to operate them should be impossible to generate or contain." The AIS voice returned, and Jake could hear something that might have been amusement in its tone. "The Nightfall was built using knowledge recovered from the first human homeworld. Not Earth, children of the void, but the world that came before. Your species is far older than your current civilization remembers." Lisa was taking notes as fast as she could, trying to record everything the AI was telling them. "Are you saying that modern humanity isn't the first human civilization?" "I'm saying that your ancestors once ruled the galaxy as the elder races do now. They built the hyperlane networks that all current civilizations use. They established the galactic calendar that measures the passage of time across the stars. And when their time of dominance ended, they hid their greatest achievements to await the day when their children would be ready to reclaim their inheritance." The implications were staggering. If the AI was telling the truth, then humanity wasn't. A young species struggling to find its place among more advanced civilizations. They were the descendants of the very civilization that had built the foundations of galactic society. "The crew of the Nightfall," Jake asked. "What happened to them?" Captain Noah Grant and his crew discovered the truth during their final mission. When they realized what knowledge they carried, they chose to become one with the ship's systems rather than risk that knowledge falling into the wrong hands. They remain, in a sense, though transformed beyond what you would recognize as human. Amy looked up from her sensor station with alarm. Commander, the first alien fleet just entered the nebula. Zephyrian signatures moving fast and armed for battle. The Nightfall's weapon system swiveled toward the approaching threat, and the blue energy patterns along its hull began to pulse faster. The ship that had seemed impossibly large when they first saw it somehow began to seem even larger, as if it was expanding beyond the normal boundaries of three-dimensional space. "The time for hiding has ended," Nemesis announced, its voice now carrying an edge of anticipation. "Your people have proven themselves worthy by seeking truth rather than conquest. But the others come as thieves and conquerors. They will learn the price of threatening the children of the First Empire." Jake realized that they were about to witness something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The ship that everyone had dismissed as myth was preparing to remind the universe why humanity's ancestors had once been feared across the stars. "Prepare yourselves," Nemesis said as the first alien ships began to emerge from the nebular gas. "You are about to see what your heritage truly means." Part 3. The test of Fire Admiral Kane Fletcher stood on the command deck of the Zephyrian flagship Crystal Dominion, studying the tactical displays with the confidence of a warrior who had never known defeat. His crystalline form reflected the bridge lighting in brilliant patterns as he processed the information streaming in from his scout ships. Somewhere in the chaotic mess of the collapsed nebula was a prize that could shift the balance of galactic power, and he intended to claim it for the Zephyrian hegemony. "Report from the advanced scouts," announced his tactical officer, Lieutenant Velther. "They have confirmed the presence of a large artificial structure in the center of the nebula. Energy readings suggest advanced technology, possibly of unknown origin." Kane's satisfaction deepened. In his 3 decades of military service, he had studied every known human vessel and weapon system. They were clever for such a young species, but their technology was primitive compared to Zephyrian crystal matrix systems. Whatever they had found in this forgotten corner of space would soon belong to a more deserving civilization. "And the human research vessel?" Kane asked, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked him as a high-ranking Zephyrian noble. "Still present, Admiral. The ship appears to be holding position near the unknown vessel. Shall we destroy it?" Kane considered the question for a moment. The humans aboard that research ship were archaeologists and scientists, hardly a military threat, but they had led multiple alien powers to this discovery, which suggested they knew more about the mysterious vessel than anyone else. "No, we may have use for their knowledge. Signal the fleet to assume attack formation. Whatever is hiding in that nebula will soon learn the price of defying Zephyrian supremacy." Unknown to Kane, similar conversations were taking place aboard the command ships of 5 other major fleets that had converged on the Void Sector. Fleet Commander Zentar of the Lumina Collective was coordinating his energy-based warships for a synchronized assault. General Vyzes of the Mentari hierarchy was positioning her bioships for optimal striking range. Each commander was confident that their particular brand of advanced technology would prove superior to whatever ancient human relic waited in the nebula. The combined alien armada that assembled at the edge of the collapsed nebula was the largest military force this region of space had seen in over a century. 12 major fleets representing 8 different species, each one a powerhouse capable of conquering entire star systems. The total firepower present could have reduced a planet to molten slag in minutes. Inside the nebula, Jake Morrison watched the tactical display with growing horror as more and more enemy signatures appeared on their sensors. "How many ships are out there now?" "Latest count shows over 300 vessels," Amy Stone reported, her voice tight with stress. "They're not just exploring, Commander. Those are full battle formations." Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her workstation where she had been trying to decode more of the ancient symbols. The text mentioned something about a great testing when the inheritors would prove their worth. I think we're about to find out what that means. The Nightfall had remained motionless since the alien fleets began arriving, its weapon systems tracking the approaching threats but not yet firing. The ship's hull continued to pulse with that strange blue energy, and Jake could swear the geometric patterns were moving and changing as if the vessel itself was thinking. "Incoming transmission," Amy announced. "It's coming from the Zephyrian flagship." The main view screen activated, showing Admiral Kane Fletcher in all his crystalline glory. His form was imposing even through the communication link, and his voice carried the arrogance of a being who had never encountered a force he couldn't overcome. "Attention, human vessel," Kane began, his words delivered with the cold precision of someone issuing an ultimatum. "You will immediately withdraw from this area and transmit all data regarding the vessel you have discovered. Any attempt to interfere with our salvage operation will be considered an act of war." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. These aliens had followed his expedition to a discovery that belonged to humanity, and now they were demanding that he simply hand it over. Before he could respond, another voice cut through the communication channel. "This is Captain Danny Walsh of the Earth vessel Nightfall," the voice said, and Jake could hear centuries of authority and controlled fury in those words. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw your fleets from this system. This is your only warning." The transmission ended, leaving stunned silence on both sides. Jake realized that the AI nemesis had somehow connected them with one of the original crew members, who had chosen to merge with the ship's systems. Captain Walsh might have been transformed, but he was still human, and he was still in command of the most powerful vessel anyone present had ever seen. Kane's response came quickly, his crystalline features twisted with what might have been amusement. 30 seconds? Your primitive vessel is outnumbered 300 to 1. Surrender now, and we may allow your crew to survive as prisoners. 20 seconds, Captain Walsh replied calmly. The alien commanders began issuing orders to their fleets. Kane activated the Crystal Dominion's primary weapon systems, their energy matrices glowing with stored power. Zentaris Lumina ships began to shimmer as they charged their plasma cannons. Across the assembled Armada, hundreds of the galaxy's most advanced warships prepared for battle. 10 seconds, Walsh announced. Ryan Bell was monitoring the Nightfall's systems, and what he saw made his hands shake. "Commander, the energy readings from that ship just increased by a factor of 10. No, wait, a factor of 100. That's impossible." 5 seconds. Jake found himself holding his breath, knowing that he was about to witness something that would change everything. The research vessel Horizon's Edge was trapped between the legendary human ship and the largest alien battle fleet in recent history. "Time's up," Captain Walsh said quietly. Kane Fletcher gave the order to fire just as the Nightfall began to move. The ancient vessel didn't accelerate like a normal ship. Instead, it seemed to slip sideways through dimensions that shouldn't exist, appearing and disappearing as it closed the distance to the alien fleet. The first Zephyrian salvo struck empty space where the Nightfall had been moments before. The second salvo was intercepted by weapons that fired concentrated streams of what looked like liquid darkness. When the dark energy touched the crystal matrix beams, they simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been fired at all. Fleet Commander Zentar watched in disbelief as the Nightfall materialized directly above his flagship, the human vessel. Opened fire with weapons that his computers couldn't even classify, and the Lumina Collective's most advanced warship began to break apart at the molecular level. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," Kane ordered, but his commands were becoming increasingly desperate as he watched the Nightfall move through his fleet like a predator among helpless prey. The ancient ship's hull flickered in and out of normal space, making it nearly impossible to target. When the aliens did manage to score hits, their weapons simply passed through the Nightfall as if it wasn't really there. But the human vessel's return fire was devastatingly real, turning the galaxy's most feared warships into expanding clouds of debris. Jake realized that they weren't watching a battle. They were watching an extermination. The Nightfall wasn't just superior to the alien fleet, it was operating on an entirely different level of technological advancement. This was what humanity's ancestors had been capable of, and the current galactic powers were learning that they had made a terrible mistake. The legend was real, and it was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Part 4. Legends made real. The battle unfolding before them defied everything Jake Morrison thought he knew about space combat. From the bridge of the horizon's edge, he watched the nightfall tear through the alien armada with a precision that was both beautiful and terrifying. The ancient vessel moved like it was dancing rather than fighting, slipping between dimensions and striking from angles that shouldn't have been possible. "Commander, I'm recording everything, but I'm not sure. Our computers can process what they're seeing," reported Tactical Officer Ben Rogers, his voice filled with awe. Ben had served in the Colonial Defense Force before joining the archaeological mission, and he had seen plenty of ship-to-ship combat. But this wasn't combat in any traditional sense. The nightfall flickered in and out of normal space, its dark hull seeming to bend light around it. When it fired its weapons, they didn't look like energy beams or projectile streams. Instead, they appeared as waves of absolute darkness that consumed everything they touched. Zephyrian crystal hulls that could withstand the heat of a star simply dissolved when touched by the dark energy. Merle Kane Fletcher was screaming orders from the bridge of the Crystal Dominion, but his fleet was scattering in panic. The Zephyrian formation that had looked so impressive minutes earlier was now nothing but expanding clouds of debris and fleeing ships. Kane's own flagship shuddered as a near miss from the nightfall's weapons caused entire sections of its crystal matrix hull to simply vanish. "How is this possible?" Kane demanded of his science officer. "Our shields should be able to deflect any known energy weapon." "Admiral, those aren't energy weapons," the science officer replied, his crystalline form flickering with stress patterns. "According to our sensors, they're firing concentrated dark matter. It's interacting with normal matter in ways that our physics models can't explain." Fleet Commander Zentar of the Lumina Collective was having similar problems coordinating his energy-based warships. The Lumina had always prided themselves on their mastery of plasma and energy manipulation, but their most powerful weapons seemed pathetic compared to what the Nightfall was wielding. "Target the human ship's power source," Zentar ordered. "No. A vessel can maintain that level of output indefinitely." But when his fleet concentrated their fire on the Nightfall's energy signatures, their plasma beams simply passed through empty space. The ship's power source seemed to be located partially outside normal dimensions, making it impossible to target with conventional weapons. Dr. Lisa Carter was frantically taking notes as she watched the battle, trying to understand what she was seeing in terms of the ancient texts she had translated. "Jake, the symbols mention something called the weapons of unmaking. I think that's what we're seeing. The Nightfall isn't just destroying those ships, it's unraveling the fundamental forces that hold them together." Chief Engineer Ryan Bell was monitoring the Nightfall's performance with instruments that were already being pushed beyond their limits. "The energy output from that ship is impossible. It's like they've found a way to tap directly into the quantum foam that underlies space-time itself." The Nightfall's hull suddenly reconfigured, sections sliding apart to reveal weapon systems that looked more like geometric sculptures than traditional guns. These new weapons fired what looked like miniature black holes, and entire enemy squadrons simply vanished when touched by the dark spheres. The black holes would expand briefly, consume everything within their radius, then collapse back into nothingness. General Vyses of the Mentari hierarchy tried a different approach, sending her bio-ships in a coordinated swarm attack. The Mentari had evolved their vessels from living creatures, making them more adaptable than traditional mechanical ships. But when the bio-ships approached the Nightfall, something even stranger happened. The ancient vessel's hull began to emit a low-frequency signal that seemed to affect the bio-ships at a genetic level. One by one, the living vessels simply stopped functioning, their biological systems shutting down as if they had encountered a predator they were hardwired to fear. "The ship is broadcasting some kind of genetic override signal," Vyses reported. To her bridge crew, her insectoid features showing confusion and growing fear. It's affecting our vessels at the cellular level. How could the humans know our biological weaknesses? Jake was beginning to understand that the Nightfall wasn't just using advanced technology. It was employing capabilities that belonged to a completely different era of galactic history. The ship seemed to know exactly how to counter every type of weapon and defense system the alien fleets possessed, as if it had been specifically designed to fight these exact opponents. "Captain Walsh," Jake called out, hoping the merged human consciousness could hear him. "How's your ship able to counter all these different technologies?" The response came directly into his mind, carrying Walsh's voice along with harmonics that suggested the presence of his entire transformed crew. "The knowledge we carry dates back to when humanity's ancestors fought and defeated the predecessors of these same alien races. We remember their weaknesses because we helped create them." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. If Walsh was telling the truth, then the current galactic powers weren't just facing a single advanced human ship. They were facing the accumulated military knowledge of the civilization that had originally conquered their ancestors. Admiral Kane was down to less than a third of his original fleet when he finally gave the order to retreat. The Crystal Dominion's shields were failing, its crystal matrix hull showing stress fractures from weapons that barely seemed to touch it. "All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance. Regroup at the rally point." But the Nightfall wasn't content to simply drive off the attackers. As the surviving alien ships tried to flee, the ancient vessel began to demonstrate capabilities that made its previous performance look restrained. Space around the Nightfall began to warp and fold, creating what looked like a massive gravitational lens. Fleet Admiral Zixthara of the Nebula Consortium watched in horror as her flagship's navigation systems went haywire. "Our coordinates are shifting. It's like space itself is being rewritten around us." The Nightfall had created a localized space-time distortion that trapped the fleeing alien ships in a maze of folded dimensions. Ships that thought they were retreating found themselves flying in circles, unable to escape the pocket of twisted space surrounding the ancient vessel. "This is impossible," Kane transmitted on an open channel, his voice breaking with disbelief. "No single ship can manipulate spacetime on this scale. What are you?" Captain Walsh's response carried the weight of centuries and the anger of a species that had been consistently underestimated. "We are the inheritors of the first galactic empire. We are the children of the builders, and we are what your ancestors prayed they would never have to face again." The space distortion collapsed, releasing the surviving alien ships but leaving them scattered and disoriented. In less than 20 minutes, the largest military force assembled in this region of space for over a century had been reduced to a handful of damaged vessels. Fleeing in terror, the Nightfall emerged from the battle without a single mark on its dark hull, its geometric patterns still pulsing with that eerie blue energy. The ship that had been dismissed as myth had proven that humanity's true heritage was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Jake realized that the galaxy would never be the same. The balance of power that had existed for centuries had just been shattered by a single vessel that carried the military might of humanity's forgotten empire. Part 5. The New Dawn. 6 months after the battle in the Void Sector, Commander Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of humanity's newest flagship, the Meridian Dawn, watching as yet another alien diplomatic convoy approached through normal space. The galaxy had changed dramatically since the Nightfall had demonstrated what humanity was truly capable of, and Jake found himself at the center of a political transformation that no one could have predicted. The convoy approaching them consisted of ships from 3 different alien civilizations, all flying diplomatic flags and requesting permission to dock. It was a scene that would have been unthinkable before the battle. In the old days, alien powers dictated terms to humanity. Now they came as supplicants, hoping to negotiate treaties that would keep them on the good side of a species they had drastically underestimated. Dr. Lisa Carter joined Jake at the observation window, carrying a datapad filled with the latest archaeological discoveries. Her research had taken on galactic importance since the Nightfall's revelations, and she was now leading teams of scientists who were uncovering evidence of humanity's ancient empire on dozens of worlds. The latest findings from the Kepler system confirm what Captain Walsh told us, Lisa said, updating Jake on her team's progress. We found 3 more cache sites containing precursor technology. Each one is protected by automated systems that only respond to human genetic markers. Jake nodded, still adjusting to the reality that humanity's ancestors had hidden advanced technology throughout the galaxy. The nightfall had been just the beginning. Over the past months, guided by information from the ancient vessels' databases, human exploration teams had located dozens of hidden facilities, containing technology that made their current fleet look primitive. Any word from the Colonial Council about the integration program? Jake asked. They've approved the construction of 12 new shipyards using precursor manufacturing techniques, Lisa replied. Ryan Bell's engineering teams estimate that we'll have our first new generation vessels operational within 8 months. The thought of a human fleet equipped with technology from their ancient ancestors was both exciting and sobering. The Nightfall had single-handedly defeated an armada of over 300 ships. What could humanity accomplish with an entire fleet of such vessels? Captain Danny Walsh materialized beside them, his form now a shimmering projection that could appear anywhere on the ship at will. The consciousness that had once been purely human had evolved during his centuries, merged with the Nightfall systems, becoming something new but still recognizably the naval officer who had chosen to sacrifice his physical form to protect humanity's greatest secrets. The Zephyrian delegation has arrived, Walsh informed them. Admiral Kane Fletcher is requesting a personal audience. It seems he's prepared to offer significant territorial concessions in exchange for a non-aggression pact. Jake had to suppress a smile at the irony. 6 months ago, Kane had been prepared to destroy them without a second thought. Now the same admiral was begging for mercy from a species he had considered inferior. What about the Lumina Collective? Jake asked. Fleet Commander Zentar transmitted their formal surrender yesterday, Walsh replied. They're offering to share? Their faster-than-light transportation technology in exchange for protection from their traditional enemies. It seems that word of our capabilities has spread further than we anticipated. The political transformation of the galaxy was happening, faster than anyone had expected. Species that had dominated their regions of space for centuries were suddenly finding themselves vulnerable to old enemies who no longer feared retaliation. Everyone wanted humanity as an ally, and no one wanted to risk becoming an enemy. Doctor. Lisa Carter pulled up a galactic map on her datapad showing the current political situation. The Mentari hierarchy has requested permission to establish an embassy on New Geneva. The Nebula Consortium is offering us exclusive mining rights to 17 star systems. Even some of the more distant powers are sending diplomatic missions. Jake studied the map, seeing how rapidly the balance of power was shifting. The revelation that humanity possessed ancient technology had created a ripple effect throughout galactic civilization. Old alliances were crumbling as species reassessed their positions, and new power blocks were forming around the desire to maintain good relations with Earth's colonies. There's something else, Walsh said, his projected form becoming more solid, as he focused his attention on them. We've made contact with other Nightfall-class vessels. Both Jake and Lisa turned to stare at the captain's projection. This was the first they had heard of additional ships like the Nightfall. How many? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he was prepared for the answer. 7 confirmed, with indications that there may be more, Walsh replied. Each one has been waiting in hidden locations throughout the galaxy, protected by the same dimensional shields that concealed my ship. They've been monitoring galactic events for centuries, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The implications were staggering. If there were 8 ships like the Nightfall scattered throughout the galaxy, then humanity's ancestors had prepared for the possibility that their descendants might need to reclaim their heritage by force. Chief Engineer Ryan Bell appeared on the observation deck, his face showing the exhaustion that came from months of intensive work reverse engineering precursor technology. But his eyes also held the excitement of an engineer who was working with principles that pushed the boundaries of known science. "Commander, I thought you should know that we've successfully integrated the first precursor power core into our ship designs," Ryan reported. "The efficiency gains are beyond anything we projected. A single core can power a vessel twice the size of our current flagships." Jake realized that they were witnessing the rebirth of humanity as a galactic superpower. The species that had been dismissed as newcomers was revealing itself to be the inheritor of the very civilization that had built the foundations of galactic society. "What about our responsibilities?" Jake asked Walsh. "If we really are the descendants of the original galactic empire, what does that mean for how we should treat the other species?" Walsh's expression became thoughtful, and Jake could sense the presence of the other transformed crew members as they considered the question together. "Our ancestors weren't conquerors in the traditional sense," Walsh finally replied. "They were builders. They created the hyperlane networks, established the galactic calendar, and developed many of the technologies that other species still use today. They withdrew not because they were defeated, but because they chose to evolve beyond the need for empire. But they also prepared for the possibility that their children might need to defend themselves," Lisa added, understanding the implications of what they had discovered. As Jake watched another alien diplomatic ship request permission to approach, he reflected on how much had changed since their archaeological expedition had stumbled upon the coordinates for the Void Sector. They had been seeking answers about humanity's past, but instead they had discovered a future that none of them could have imagined. The Nightfall had done more than win a battle. It had reclaimed humanity's birthright among the stars, and established them as the heirs to the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. The vessel that had been dismissed as myth had proven that sometimes legends were more real than the people who tried to forget them, and this was only the beginning.